What's up, grinders? Welcome to another edition of the NFL Pre-Lock Show here on RotoGrinders.com and live on our YouTube channel. Happy to be with you for Thursday Night Football. Didn't do the old blender good evening grinders because my voice might crack if I tried that, and it usually always breaks the Zoom room. So the Zoom room is happy to not be broken tonight by blenders booming good evening grinders. But good evening nonetheless. I'm Justin Van Zuden, usually on with Blender, but filling in the hosting role here tonight with Keith Eister alongside me as Blender is out. So thanks to Keith for filling in. And Keith, what's going on? How's your week been going here?
Going good. Just wrapped up some NBA stuff. I guess we still got NBA stuff to wait on tonight with the Heat situation out there late tonight, but we'll see what happens there. But yeah, happy to jump in and talk a little NFL showdown. Always love these slates. Lots of big prize pool money out there. So let's get some of that.
Yeah, for sure. We've got a pretty interesting game tonight with the Ravens and the Dolphins. The Ravens favored by a little over a touchdown. And you can bet on the game at our sponsor, BetMGM. We'll make sure to pass that info along here throughout the show. You can use the promo code GRINDERSBET. And then if you bet $10, you get $200 instantly on BetMGM if your team scores a touchdown. Safe to say, you can just bet on the Ravens. And the Ravens are probably going to get, you would think, at least one touchdown tonight. So that's BetMGM. Check them out. Hoping for them to get going here in Illinois at some point once the fun that is the Illinois legislature changes those rules up. But BetMGM, proud sponsor of the show, and you can also sign up for RotoGrinders Premium. Great time to do that. Basically all the major sports except baseball are in play now. We got golf season winding down, but they're only off for a month. We got college basketball just started up last night. College football still going on with the bowl games coming up, NBA, NHL. This is the best time of year to try out RotoGrinders Premium. You can hit the link that we're going to have Devin post in the chat or in the description. Get $10 off your first month of either a single sport package or the combo package, which pretty much has everything except NASCAR. So great time to try that out, and we hope you do, and we hope you like it. All right, let's start talking about this game a little bit, and just in general with these two teams. I mean, the Ravens, it's been an interesting year for the Ravens, and I'm a Baltimore fan, so I'm a little bit more plugged in with this team than maybe some of the others. But you look at their record, and they're one of only two teams in the AFC, with the other being the Titans, with only 2 losses. But it's a little bit deceptive. I mean, this is a team that narrowly beat the Chiefs, and the Chiefs haven't been as good as everyone expected them to be. They beat the Lions, but that took a bad officiating call and a 66-yard field goal to beat the Lions. And they got, they've played some good competition, and the Bengals beat them down in Baltimore a few weeks ago. So while I'm a fan, and I guess that maybe makes me a little bit pessimistic, I'm not sure if this team is as good as everybody thinks they are. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't know how good this Ravens team really is. And, you got all these veteran running backs that they're rotating in and out. None of them are really that good anymore. And I don't know. I'm not completely sold on them. Keith, what do you think about this Ravens team?
Yeah, I think you're a little pessimistic on them, and that's natural. I know you're a Cardinals fan for baseball too, and you tend to talk
I'm the
down on
same
them a
way.
little bit. So yeah, I think this Baltimore team is really good, and it's primarily because of Lamar Jackson. Like they've obviously dealt with a ton of injuries. I mean, their whole running backs room that they expected to have is down. So I mean, they're filling in with the old guys, but Lamar has looked awesome. The thing I'm most encouraged about with Baltimore is their pass rate over expectation is like top 10 in the league, where like it's nice that Harbaugh has been willing to adjust to that and let Lamar throw it a little bit more. Lamar is running a ton as well, 21 rushing attempts in his last game out when in that trailing game script. So just love what you're seeing out of Lamar, and he's keeping them in games, winning games for them almost single-handedly at times. So I think Baltimore is good. I like them to win this game pretty comfortably. The Miami defense, I think, is overrated coming into the year. I think people have kind of caught on that it's not very good. Byron Jones has had an awful year on the outside for the Dolphins. So I'm looking for Lamar to have quite a bit of success again tonight and just kind of continue his elite fantasy production.
I know every team in the league would struggle if they lost their starting quarterback, but when you consider the rest of the roster and all the garbage running backs they have, Marquise Brown is really, and Andrews are solid, but not, the best in the league by any means. And the defense hasn't been as good for the Ravens as a result of some of those injuries. Like, if they lost Lamar Jackson, how bad would they be? Would they be the worst team not named like the Lions and the Jaguars and the Jets if they lost Lamar?
I mean, that you might have a point there. Without Lamar, it would be very tough. I think he is covering up a lot of the flaws on this team, but as long as they have Lamar, I'm willing to bet on him.
Yes. And if you go by that logic, like it bothers me that, in my opinion, if they end up finishing, 13-4 or something like that, then he should be a shoo-in for the MVP. He probably won't be. He's not the favorite right now, but that's not the purpose for us to go into in the show. We'll break down the players and the DFS plays here. Plenty of time. We've still got 45 minutes till the game starts. Just getting a little intro on the two teams here. Let's talk about the Miami side. This is a team that's been up and down all year. Questions about whether or not Tua is the answer. I think people are starting to lean towards no there. Jacoby Brissett will get the start again tonight, even though Tua is active. Hey, they won last week. Well, it was the Texans. Can't really put a whole lot of stock into that. But you mentioned that the Miami defense hasn't really been as good as a lot of people expected. Tough to expect a whole lot out of the offense, given their lack of, elite skill player talent.
Yeah, obviously a couple wide receivers out, Devontae Parker and Will Fuller still out, Tua missing at quarterback. So we're dealing with a very watered down Miami offense. The running back situation is interesting. Like Gaskin has been the clear lead guy. Ahmed barely touched the ball last week, so we'll definitely have to get into that a little bit. They are on a short week, so after Gaskin's heavy workload on Sunday, I think Ahmed plays a lot bigger role. He's one of the top value plays on the slate for me. And then trying to figure out what they do with their other wide receivers. Obviously, you have Waddle at the top there. Haven't seen the big playability that we kind of expected out of him. But then you're dealing with guys like Mac Hollins, Albert Wilson. What kind of a role does Preston Williams have? All that's going to be interesting and definitely plays into how we want to attack this slate.
Yeah, for sure. And, part of the purpose of all this is just to say there's a lot of unpredictability on these teams. Baltimore's running backs have been a disaster all year. We don't know how many carries Gaskin's going to get on a short week. Both teams have had issues with production from their receivers, whether it's Marquise Brown having the drops or, the Dolphins having injuries. At tight end has been the one position where both these teams have had some consistency. And tight ends go off on every showdown slate. So let's just play Andrews and Gesicki and we can call it a show. But I was saying before the show, this is the week where all the good tight ends are on the showdown slates. You got the Chiefs, 49ers, all those teams are playing in the primetime games this week. So this will probably be the week where the tight ends don't do anything, or it's the backup tight ends doing something on showdown. But, I say all this to kind of get to the point that Lamar Jackson is so far and away the obvious captain pick in DFS tonight that when you look at our projected ownership in captains, we've got a lot of times, just for context, in other showdown slates, you'll see quarterbacks at like 15% owned or 20% owned at the highest in the captain. We've got Lamar at 41% owned in the captain, and it's going to be even higher in the MVP spot over on FanDuel without the salary multiplier. And if you're playing cash games, you just have to put him in the captain and move on. But like in GPP, the conversation becomes so interesting. What do we do with Lamar? It feels like you're either going underweight if you're building multiple entries, or you're just locking him in. Is he so far ahead that you just lock him in and then worry about the rest?
As far as captain goes, I think it's okay to go underweight in captain for him. It's really hard to build a lineup without Lamar at all. So in any lineup that I'm not running him in the captain, he will be in the flex. So that puts him in every lineup, but I don't think you need to lock him into the captain by any means. 40% ownership, that's a lot of the field that you can beat if one of his pass catchers happens to catch 2 touchdowns or something like that. He doesn't run a touchdown in. There are several paths to one of those guys passing Lamar. You also have the Dolphins guys. It's a little more difficult to see them with their backup quarterback and some of their best skill players injured. But if you want to take a shot on like Gesicki or Waddle, I think would be the only 2 Dolphins I'd be willing to do that on, and just hope that they catch like 10 balls and 2 touchdowns and they end up passing Lamar. But yeah, it'll be a very condensed pool of captains for me tonight. But I think you can go underweight on Lamar in captain.
Yeah, I don't hate the logic. We got him projected for double the fantasy points of everybody else. I don't know. It's tough. I've gone back and forth between that logic and then locking him in. I probably end up locking him in, but it's just really 40% ownership. It's so strange to see, but we've got him projected at 42 captain points, and nobody else in the above 22. So that's just a big gap. And it's not like Marquise Brown is that much cheaper than him either. I think if you're not going Lamar either, and I mean, you almost can't go a Baltimore running back. So you almost have to go somebody on the Miami side, or go down to maybe Andrews if you want to go with the tight end, showdown narrative and put Andrews in there. But and maybe he gets all the touchdowns. Otherwise, I think you're on the Miami side. I mean, is there anybody you feel comfortable captaining from the Miami perspective?
I think Gesicki is the one I'd be most comfortable with. I mean, he's a tight end in name only. He's going to be lined up in the slot, lining up out wide the vast majority of the time. You need him to catch 2 touchdowns probably to outproduce Lamar, but he's got an awesome workload, huge target share, and I think he's got upside for 2 touchdowns. So I'd be willing to do it with Gesicki. Waddle was the other one I mentioned. I think you can do that as well. We just haven't seen the big plays out of him, but he's going to see double-digit targets more than likely with some of the other injuries that they're dealing with. So if he finds the end zone twice, I certainly think he could get there as well.
I think he's got a lot of upside here. We've seen the Ravens struggle with some big play receivers. Obviously, without Marcus Peters, that eliminates, the corner that can shut down the opposing number 1 receiver. Jamar Chase gave them fits. I think some of these young receivers, Waddle is a really, really interesting play tonight. I think he's one of my favorites as far as the not complete obvious captain. If there was somebody that could put up, say, 200 yards tonight, on the Miami side, I think he's definitely your top choice. So I like Waddle. I like that call. All right, so let's go ahead and kind of go through the builds here. So let's go team by team. Let's start with the Miami side because it's a little less exciting. You got to play somebody here. And we can look at Slate IQ a little bit later to see if, the 4-2 builds or the 5-1 builds or the 3-3 builds to see what the modeling likes tonight. But just in general, from the Miami perspective, we're talking about flex plays here. Who are some of the guys that you're looking to target? Let's talk the passing game first, since we were just talking about Waddle. Seems like he's going to be the most popular.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to touch on Brissett too, real quick.
Sure.
His price is up there for a backup quarterback, but he's been playing quite a bit with Tua out anyway, so the price is fair for what he is. But I think there's a little bit of upside, and it's going to be tough to play him for a lot of people. So we have him currently projected about 32% owned in the flex, and I think that's a little bit light. So I'm trying to get overweight,
especially since a lot of times we see the captains The quarterback's at like 15%, but we've only got him at about 5 or 6% in the captain. So it's not like there's a ton of captain ownership soaking that up either. I mean, the reason Lamar's flex percentage is so much lower is because everybody's playing him in the captain. So, yeah, I agree. I think that that percentage is definitely a little bit lighter than I would have expected. And if that's the case, I'll definitely be overweight on that number.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a big spread. We expect Baltimore to play from ahead, so we should see quite a few dropbacks from Brissett, and that puts all of his pass catchers in play too, obviously. I think they're going to have some success. Baltimore hasn't been like a top tier defense, I wouldn't say. We talked about a lot of their injuries that they're dealing with, so yeah, very much interested. Waddle is the top option. Mac Hollins is the guy who's been seeing the most run with the other injuries that they're dealing with. A 4.2 price tag is a little bit difficult, but if you can fit that in, I don't mind that. The third wide receiver is interesting. Preston Williams has been inactive at times this year. He's just $200 on DraftKings. I definitely think you can take some shots there. And then Albert Wilson is the other one that I would look to. I mean, unless Gesicki and Waddle just see a ton of targets, and they might each see double digits, but I think that there's room where Albert Wilson or Preston Williams can get involved here too. They make a lot of sense as value plays for me.
I mean, Preston Williams was their wide receiver one for a time last year.
Last season, yeah.
I mean, it's like, and then he went to being inactive with all the injuries they've had. Just really hard to peg what the snap share is going to be. Obviously, Gesicki and Waddle are fine, and they're going to get theirs, but you got to go cheap, and I don't mind the calls on some of those more affordable guys. So that's the Miami passing game. I have seen some talk of Durham Smythe, who is the backup tight end that we have at about 10% ownership. The tight end narrative is fully taking hold in Showdown. So he got a couple targets last week, but I don't know, double-digit ownership on a backup tight end seems weird to me. But I'm not going to be the guy that poo-poos a tight end on a Showdown slate because they get there every week. So any interest there, or is that a fade for you?
I've got interest there. I think I'd be more willing to fade Gesicki than and play some of the Miami value, and that's mainly because I'm so interested in the expensive Baltimore pass catchers. To be able to make those kind of lineups work, I need value, and I'm mostly using the Miami side as the value.
All right, let's talk about the running game. You mentioned, being a little bit concerned about Gaskin's workload as a result of last week and the short week, and the fact that they actually won a game last week, so they were able to run the ball a good bit. And you mentioned kind of like an Ahmed as a value piece. So what do we do with the Miami running game here?
Yeah, I'm off the Miami running game basically. So I'm more interested in who's going to catch passes out of the Miami backfield. But just looking back at last week, they played Houston, and Gaskin got 20 rushing attempts, and he was only able to put up 34 yards on those 20 rushing attempts. So
solid volume, my friend.
Yeah. I don't know how he's going to get anything going here against Baltimore. A big price tag, 9.4K on DraftKings. I'm not playing Gaskin. I know he has a role in the passing game too, but that price tag is just going to be very difficult for him to pay it off in this spot. As overpriced as I think Gaskin is, I think Ahmed is underpriced. I mentioned Gaskin being just like the guy last week, but before that, Ahmed had quite a bit of a role. He was getting 5 to 7 carries a game, seeing 2 to 3 targets a game. Like there's been a role here all season. I don't know what happened last week, why he was kind of phased out. But I'm going to play that as it was an anomaly. The price is outstanding here. He's my favorite value play on the slate.
Now, to be fair, he's only averaging 2.6 yards a carry himself, so it's not like he's been rolling with his touches.
Right. But he needs to do a lot less at $800 compared to what Gaskin needs to do at 9.4K.
Oh, I know. I just had to play devil's advocate there for a second with referencing the 20 carries for 34 yards or whatever it was. And the opposing ground games have had some success against the Ravens. They have been a little more vulnerable against the pass, but Dalvin Cook did go for 110 yards last week in a game where the Vikings only had the ball The Ravens outpossessed them by like 22 minutes, and that game went deep into overtime. So a little bit of statistical variance there, but Jonathan Taylor scored a touchdown, Mixon scored a touchdown, Cook went for 110 yards. So it's not like they're impenetrable, but they're still a good rush defense. And if Miami falls behind, you're probably going to see the Dolphins have to take to the air a good bit here. So I do agree on a point per dollar basis. I think Ahmed at $800 makes sense. And, Gaskin at the high price tag, he's going to definitely need to score. And, Miami's only pegged for about 18 points and 8 or 9 point underdogs. So I kind of agree with your conclusions on there. So anybody else on the Miami side? Any interest in their defense? Jason Sanders as a punt? Anybody we didn't mention?
So I know we'll get into Slate IQ in a little while here, a little bit later, but a very shocking revelation on the Dolphins defense when we pull that up. So I would say at 2.8K, they're in play.
All right. We'll go to Slate IQ here in a little bit. Let's talk through the Baltimore side here. So obviously Jackson, we've got him 40% owned in the captain, 55% owned in the flex. That's 95% ish total, basically a lot. So backup QB narrative. Those of you that somebody won with Johnson last Thursday as the backup quarterback. So you can, let's see, is McSorley still their backup? Or is Huntley the backup? Now I got to look at the depth chart. I'm not sure who the backup is.
It was Huntley earlier in the year. I know that, but I'm not sure if that's
that might be. I don't think either one of them's gotten a regular season snap yet. I could be wrong. Yeah, Huntley's the second guy. So I just remember McSorley from the preseason because he was playing basically the whole games. All right, so Huntley's the backup over McSorley if you're playing backup QB season with Lamar at 95%. But I'm not going to, as a Ravens fan, I don't want to root for the star QB to get hurt. So we're not doing that. At least I'm not. But all right. So Jackson, Brown, Andrews, that seems to be where everybody's going. And like you've got all these receiving pieces because how on earth can you play any of these Baltimore running backs? Like we talk about the yards per carry for the Miami guys. All these Baltimore guys are awful. And I can't figure out for the life of me why Tyson Williams was very good in the first game of the season. And I know he's got issues, pass blocking and things like that, but like Le'Veon Bell and Devontae Freeman are not the answer. And Latavius Murray, and he's inactive tonight. So that's one guy down, but it just shocks me that they completely have gone away from Tyson Williams and they're going with these veteran guys with no explosiveness. So like, how can you play any of these guys?
Yeah. The only reason we're talking about them is because it's showdown in one game and we have to find some ways to get different. But Freeman and Bell, to me, are not the way to do it. Sure, it's possible. They are the ones that vulture the touchdowns. I don't like any of them for big yardages. One of the props I have up on Scores and Odds tonight is Freeman under. Theoretically, he's the RB1 here, but he only got 13 carries in the last game. 56% of the time he was on the field. So Le'Veon Bell and even Tyson Williams worked in a little bit last week. You say Freeman got 13 carries. They also ran 89 offensive plays. It's not like they only ran 50 or 60 plays. They ran 89 plays for him to get right.
Those
so you think 13 carries and it's like, okay, that's a decent load, but yeah, 89 plays is a massive amount of plays. But when you look at it from a market share of rushing perspective, it's like 33%, I think was the number, something right around that. But that's because Lamar takes so much of it. So I'm not playing Freeman at all. I'm not playing Bell either. I know their ownership looks crazy for what we would usually have interested on Showdown. It looks attractive. I just don't think there's any upside there for either of those guys. The one guy I do have some shots on is Tyson Williams. We've seen the Ravens play from behind more than I think they should be. And you mentioned Williams' big problem is his role in the passing game and his pass blocking. The Ravens don't trust him to do that at all. I think if the Ravens were to get up by 2 scores or something here, that he might be able to get a little bit of extra run. That ownership at just under 2% looks very nice. If he was the one closing out the fourth quarter with a handful of carries and ended up finding the end zone late at 1.2K, he could get there just on fourth quarter garbage time alone. So I do have some shots on Tyson Williams.
Yeah, and they've been trailing in the last couple of games against the Bengals, and then they came back last week to win against the Vikings. So they were playing from behind in both those games. It just shocks me. And the week before against the Chargers, they blew them out. I think he was inactive that week. But he's averaging 5.5 yards a carry. And then, I mean, he just got completely phased out. So strange to me after how good he looked those first couple games. But I know I'm not crunching the film and all those things that, he probably made some dumb mistakes in pass blocking and all that. But from a fantasy perspective, he's definitely a lot more interesting than these other veteran guys. Just a matter of whether or not he's going to find the field. So I agree. Underweight on that group is just hard to trust them. The other question mark comes with how are these receiver snaps going to break down, because Sammy Watkins is back tonight and he's missed a few games. So this is, I believe, the first game all year where they have had, yes. So Watkins played weeks 1 through 4. Then week 5, he got hurt. And then week 6 was the first week that Bateman was active. So this is the first week that both Watkins and Bateman have been active together. And then you've got Duvernay, who's been playing on around 50% of the offensive snaps. So Marquise Brown is obviously their wide receiver 1. But with Duvernay and Watkins and Bateman all active, it's just a big question as to how the snaps are going to break out among those 3 guys. What are your thoughts on how the Ravens might use Duvernay, Watkins, and Bateman with them all being active for the first time?
Yeah, tough situation to figure out. I will say one encouraging thing for this situation is that Nick Boyle was not activated today, who's like their primary blocking tight end. He's an elite run blocker. And they tend to run a lot of 2 tight end sets when Boyle is available to them. So maybe they go a little bit more 3 wide. I have interest in Bateman and Watkins, honestly. I don't need Watkins to step back into that, 24% target share or whatever he had the first couple of weeks of the season. I think that's gone with what Bateman has showed in his couple of games that he's been active. I think he looks really good. Obviously, a first-round draft pick. The Ravens are really high on him. I think he's going to be out on the field plenty. But both of their price tags in the mid-range, I'm playing both of them because I think that there's a route where they can both get there in this game.
Yeah, I like them as plays. You look at Bateman. I mean, he was drafted as a really good fit for this offense. 6 and 8 targets the 3 games he's been active. Hasn't scored yet, but he was a really solid player in college and at Minnesota. I think at his salary on DraftKings, he's one of my favorites there. And Watkins, a little bit unpredictable because he hasn't played in a month. But those of you who play Showdown, remember, usually on week 1 as well, these are the games where Watkins sometimes just blows up and then doesn't do anything the rest of the year. But he can go off just randomly, it seems, at times. So I don't mind Watkins as a GPP play. I think Duvernay is the one maybe whose playing time gets squeezed a little bit. Our projections agree. We've only got Duvernay at about 3 or 4 points, Bateman at 9, Watkins at 6. So I think Bateman and Watkins are definitely the plays there. I'll be underweight on Duvernay as well. Let's talk about the main pass catching targets. Brown or Andrews, you got a preference among those 2?
The price on Marquise Brown is tough to swallow. I do like him as a captain. As far as my flex ownership on Brown, I'm under, but I am overweight on Brown as a captain. So under in the flex, over in captain for Brown. Andrews is one of my favorite plays on the whole slate. I'm jamming him in as much as I can.
All right. We'll go over and look at Slate IQ in a second, and we'll take your questions in the YouTube chat. Reminder, BetMGM, great sponsor of the show. Promo code GRINDERSBET. Bet $10. Your team scores a touchdown, you get $200. Can't beat that. So BetMGM, promo code GRINDERSBET to get that deal. Justin Tucker is always a great play. Blender and I talked about this one time. Like, there's no doubt, like the special teams guys always, get the short end of the stick, but there's no doubt that Justin Tucker's a Hall of Famer when he retires, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, best ever, right? Greatest of all time.
His numbers are just ridiculous.
Yeah, he's in that conversation at least.
Yeah, I saw it when I think it was the Lions game where he won it with the 60-some yarder. Boy, I don't know what the number is right now, but it's like at least 53 straight makes in the fourth quarter and overtime. And then, I mean, we saw the one game a month ago where the Packers and the Bengals missed like 4 in a row or something in the fourth quarter and overtime. And Tucker's made like 54 in a row. Just as a Baltimore fan, and I know I come off pessimistic a lot, but it's very refreshing to have a kicker that basically you can count on every time. You see all these, like, I can't imagine, we're both from Illinois, the hate that Cody Parkey got when he missed that field goal in the playoffs. And it's almost a thankless job being a kicker, because nobody's really going to remember you if you do your job. But if you screw up, it's very rare that people remember kickers for being good. And Justin Tucker is one of the rare guys. So you can always play him. Obviously he's got the leg to make the 50+ yarders. And he's usually going to, get you something, but he is also going to be one of the more popular values. All right, let me pull up Slate IQ here, and then we can talk about what you were hinting at a little bit earlier about the defenses. I think I almost clicked on our video. That would have been, I did click on our video. Well, that's going to be weird. We don't want that showing up twice on everybody's screen. All right, a little alternative universe there. Let's click on Slate IQ. There we go. All right, so you can see the note, Jacoby Brissett will start, and let me balloon this up just a little so it's easier to see the charts. Okay, so this is the roster construction in bar graph form. So the gray bar is what the field average is doing. The blue bar is what the top 0.1% of lineups are doing in your average slate with this type of game. Total in the mid 40s, 7, 8, 9 point spread, similar game types. And the 5, 1, 4, 2, that would be players from the winning team and then players from the losing team. So you can see the field is using a 5-1 build 11% of the time, only in the top 0.1%, 5% of the time. The 4-2 and the 3-3 is mainly where the positive leverage is coming in. And the rest of them all seem suboptimal. So based on this data, if you just want to go off the simulations, it seems like the sims are telling you to use 4 players from the winning team, theoretically the Ravens, and 2 from the Dolphins. So have you found yourself with a lot of those 4-2 type builds? Seems like it works a little bit that way.
Yeah, I will say there's a lot of value on the Dolphins side because of some of their injuries. So like if you just run lineups, you get a lot of 3-3 Dolphins and even some with 4 Dolphins in there. So I did adjust my settings a little bit to force in 4 Ravens on the majority of my builds. It's like I talked about Marquise Brown's price tag. It's very, like, if you're using an optimizer, it's rarely going to jam in Marquise and Andrews into the same lineup. So I force a little bit of that. But yeah, that's primarily what I tried to do, is get as much 4-2 Ravens as I could.
Yeah, the 2-4 and 1-5 lineups, definitely negative leverage on those, pretty large percentages. So not going too crazy with that. I think this makes sense given the likely flow of the game. So, all right, that's more simulated optimal roster construction. Now we can look at historical captain usage in these types of slates. You can see most of the field, 24% of the time, QB1 in the captain, 18% for the top 0.1%. So a little bit of negative leverage on those Lamar captain lineups, perhaps here. And basically what the simulations are flowing with the tight end narrative for Showdown. 19% of the time, the top 0.1% of lineups with a tight end in the captain. That's more than the QB1. It's telling you that the top 0.1% of the lineups, more times than not on this type of slate, it'll be a tight end more so than a quarterback. That is the world we're living in 2021. So Gesicki, Andrews, load them up. RB1, tough to peg the RB1s for the Ravens, so that would be difficult. A little bit of negative leverage on the other positions, but really the only thing that stands out is the negative leverage on quarterback and the positive leverage on tight end. So anything you're doing differently as a result of this?
So I do have a ton of Andrews in the captain, as I mentioned, and I do have a little bit of Gesicki in the captain. I'll tell you, the one stand that I did take that doesn't flow with these numbers is I mentioned Marquise Brown in the captain. Like when he goes off, he seems to be like the guy you need. So I overrode that. I jammed in more Marquise Brown than the numbers say to do on this. So that's the one differentiation I have in my lineups compared to what we're seeing here.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I think given the nature of these rosters, it's a little bit hard to pigeonhole some players into specific spots, particularly with the running backs and, maybe the Miami receivers, but all in on that tight end narrative. All right. Let's look at projected captain usage. Let's see where the leverage is here. You can replace Tua with Brissett in this, in theory, similar numbers if you run it with either one. But it's saying that captain optimal about 16% of the time with the Miami quarterback in there. And he's only going to be owned at about 7% in the captain. I think with Brissett, we've got that around 5 or 6. So possibly some leverage on Brissett in the captain.
Yeah, I like that. And like Brissett's price tag is in the same range, and I think expected production is pretty much in the same range too. So just because that says Tua there, I still think those numbers are completely accurate. Another thing that stood out to me, like we talked about Lamar having massive ownership in the captain, 40%. It looks like that's about roughly the optimal percentage that he shows up in captain too. So that the big number that the field is jamming in there is actually seems to be correct on this slate, which is not a bit surprising.
Not out of line with the simulated projections either. So don't mind that. Somebody you can see, I mean, all these other numbers are so low just because it's one of those weird slates where Lamar is carrying so much ownership in the captain. You can see Gesicki projected 4% owned in the captain, 2% optimal, but the simulated captain data did say that there is positive leverage on using tight end 1 in the captain. So, to me that data is a little bit misleading because if it's, positive leverage, but here it's negative leverage, and let's see where Andrews was, same thing. So in my eyes, I don't know. I might ask that question about how that data is run, because up here it's telling us, hey, that 19% of the time, top 0.1% of lineups are using tight end captains. But down here, we've only got Andrews optimal 6% of the time and Gesicki at 2. I don't know. Am I missing something there?
No, those numbers didn't quite add up to me for me either. I see what you're saying there.
I might pass that feedback along.
It looks like it might have been 2 different simulations on that. Like I don't know exactly. Like
yeah,
you said,
no,
I'm not
I think
sure how
they definitely do it in 2 separate iterations, but I'm not sure what all the data goes into it, but you'd think that would match up a little bit more. So anyway, feedback for me to pass along. Always looking to improve. Then we look at flex usage here, and again, the optimal showing up, possibly Miami QB having some positive leverage. And then I know you wanted to talk about that Miami defense. So what does this chart speak to you?
Well, kickers and defense together. Tucker, we talked about how awesome he is. You can gain about 10% leverage. He's optimal about 35% of the time in the flex. We only have him projected about 25% owned. So get a little leverage with him. Baltimore's defense also. Neither of those were surprising to me. People don't love to play kickers in defense, and Tucker's one of the best kickers. Miami, obviously, with a backup quarterback and some injured skill position players, both of those made complete sense to me. If you go down just a little bit more, you see the Miami Dolphins showing up in the optimal about almost 27% of the time versus 10% ownership. And I think that's just price related. Like Lamar will turn it over a little bit, so that makes some sense too. But I think it's mainly a price play and just the value that you get on them. So That one stuck out to me that they are viable, even though we expect them to lose. They get some, like Lamar will take some sacks, they get some turnovers. Even if the Dolphins get blown out here, I think they can show up in the optimal just because of their price tag.
Yeah, and Lamar, the Ravens are playing. You hit on this at the top of the show. The Ravens are playing more of a risk reward game this year, and they have to, just because they don't have the explosive playmakers at running back. They're letting Lamar throw the ball down the field, and they're kind of subscribing to that theory that, okay, if we're throwing the ball 20, 30 yards down the field, we're not going to have as high of a hit rate, but when we do hit, we're going to get some big plays. And that's helped them come back from a big deficit to beat the Vikings last week. So they're not going to change the way that they play. They are going to have some turnovers, but they're also going to have some big plays. And you're not playing a defense for points allowed. Like, you're not playing the Dolphins defense because you think they're only going to allow 3 or 6 points. I think that's a big misconception that people have. But sacks and turnovers and possibly a defensive touchdown. And you could double dip that Ravens defense with Duvernay tonight if you want to maybe root for a punt return touchdown or something. But
yeah, you made a great point there. Like, I'm playing a lot of Miami defense, but I'm playing it with Lamar. Like, the best thing in that scenario is Lamar throws a pick six and finds himself in a game script that's sped up a little bit, and he needs to throw even more than expected. So perfectly fine to do that. Points allowed are not a concern. So great point there by you.
Yep. I mean, when you get to 14 plus points allowed, unless you're pitching a shutout or only allowing 3 points, like, it's not that big of a difference. So, all right. Anything else in the Slate IQ? You can see kind of negative leverage there on Marquise Brown, Gesicki in the flex. Duvernay, that number is probably, no, that's what we had him at, 22%. Like, I don't know. I don't think Duvernay's ownership has to come down with Watkins active, wouldn't you think?
I do think so, yes. And Duvernay's been running out of the slot a lot, and obviously Sammy Watkins isn't going to run out of the slot, but I think Rashad Bateman will. And Marquise Brown has even seen a few slot snaps this year. So when I evaluated the Ravens wide receivers, Duvernay is definitely the guy that got squeezed. I think Bateman and Brown run out of the slot a little bit, and with Watkins on the outside. So.
Yeah, I think our ownership numbers were hedging a little bit in case Watkins wasn't active. So otherwise, if Duvernay is that highly owned, I'm definitely rooting for him not to be the guy in that Baltimore passing game tonight. So another reminder, Keith referenced it a little bit ago, but you can check out our betting arm at RotoGrinders called Scores and Odds, so you can get all the picks, and we've got tons of people providing picks now on Scores and Odds. A lot more volume in there than what we had earlier, and we've got some people that have really been rolling with their picks. You can see we've got we'll give a little peek behind the Scores and Odds window, but Chief likes Mark Andrews over 3.5 receptions tonight. Also likes Lamar not to throw a pick. And there's Keith, who mentioned this prop earlier, under 45.5 rushing yards for Devontae Freeman. So we can confirm that he did actually post the pick that he mentioned there earlier in the show. So you can check us out, scoresandodds.com. You can see we got like 8 or 10 picks posted just for this Monday Night Football game tonight. So check us out, scoresandodds.com. All right, we've got 9 minutes here until roster lock. I'm going to flip my screen. I'll put Lineup HQ back on the screen here for anybody who was viewing that. And then I'll flip back over and check out the YouTube chat and see what we got for questions. Let's get the Showdown slate back up there. And there we go. Okay, I will pivot back to the YouTube chat, scroll up here a little bit. Let's see. QQ GPP on DraftKings. Would you rather have Tucker or the Baltimore defense?
Give me Tucker on that one. I like Baltimore to score quite a bit of points. I usually like the kicker often comes along for the ride when in big scoring games.
Don't mind that. How about Watkins or Tucker?
I mean, if it's a large field tournament, I'd prefer Watkins for sure. Just because much more upside in my opinion, and less ownership.
Yeah, I think Watkins in a tournament for sure is the play. Eric Johnson says backup QBs are becoming more popular. Yeah, they are. Like, I'm not going to root for Lamar to get hurt though, but they definitely are becoming a little more popular. People see the hit rate when it does happen, and we've seen some starting quarterbacks go down in Showdown. Russell Wilson, Mike White last week. So stuck with 7,200 on my last DK lineup. Can't decide on that spot. Let's see, 7,200. Yeah, that is a tough spot.
Tough spot.
Gesicki at 74 and Waddle at 82. It's probably Bateman for me if you don't already have him.
I would agree with that. Yep.
All right. Jordan says best leverage captain choice. So best non-Lamar captain choice.
I went with Marquise Brown. I think that price tag is going to keep people off of him. The build starts to get really tight when you play Marquise at captain and Lamar in the flex, obviously. So you're going to have to be comfortable with some of the like Salvon Ahmed value. I played Tyson Williams with those two quite a bit just because I think if Marquise Brown goes off early, the Ravens play with a big lead. I think Tyson Williams can honestly get quite a bit of run in garbage time. So I like that combination, but it's Marquise Brown for me.
All right. Let's see what else. We've got about 5 minutes left until lock. So get your final lineup construction in. Just preferring the tight ends, Gesicki or Andrews?
I mean, they're both two of the best plays on the slate.
Of course they are. Tight ends in the showdown.
Yeah. But they're also both high volume tight ends too. So I'll take Andrews in this one. I think the Ravens win big. Like I said, I built with 4 Ravens in most every lineup. So I think I have a little bit more Andrews than I do Gesicki. But like I said, they're two of the best plays on the slate.
Yeah, don't mind that. My exposure is probably about the same. You can go with the backup tight ends as well. Durham Smythe getting some buzz as kind of a popular value tonight. I'm not going there, but I'll happily laugh and post on Twitter. Now we can look to the tight ends on the next slate, like I do every showdown slate. All right. This is a good one. Bateman or Gesicki for DK? I mean, Gesicki is a lot safer. He's probably the play there, though. I've got plenty of Bateman and GPPs.
Yeah. Gesicki is 1A or 1B, I would say, in that the Miami offense, where Bateman is more like third or fourth at best. So yeah, it's definitely Gesicki, just like from an optimal standpoint.
All right. Somebody says, would you consider fading Brissett? I mean, I think in a single entry GPP, like I certainly think you can, but like if you were building a cash lineup tonight, I mean, I think Brissett makes sense just to be one of the safe Dolphins plays.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that. I do think volume is concentrated quite a bit on Gesicki and Waddle, so I don't mind either of them. I mean, and I don't want more than 2 of the expensive Dolphins in there. So, but yeah, for cash games, Brissett, Gesicki, Waddle would be and I think you only want 2 of those.
I would agree with that. I think that makes sense.
We talked about Brissett's ownership. I do think it's a little low, so I tried to get over that.
Yeah, and I'm really interested to see kind of where that comes in. We had him at like 6% captain, 32% flex, and I would think maybe 2 to 3% higher in the captain spot, and maybe 5 to 10% higher in the flex is where he will end up. But I'm not the ownership guru. I could look like the fool at the end of the day for that. All right, I think that is all the questions that we've got in the YouTube chat. Looking through our final projections here, it looks like we've got Baltimore defense at about 8 points. You know, that's basically the same type of fantasy point production we've got pegged for most of the running backs and the lower end receivers in this game. So like Keith mentioned, people don't like playing defenses or kickers. And I think you certainly can here with these teams. So Baltimore should have a lot of fans too. I think they had a lot of fans traveling down. I mean, heck, if I was in Baltimore right now, I'd, convenient excuse for a trip to Miami would be fine with me. Get down to Florida and not in Baltimore in November. Heck, trip to Miami without a football game would be okay. Other last thoughts for you on your lineup constructions or how you're approaching the night here as we get close to lineup lock?
I think we covered most of it. Patrick Laird's a guy we didn't talk about.
He's got a rabid DFS fan base.
Yeah, he does.
Look at that game log.
I mean, I talked about the game flow. I think Baltimore wins by multiple scores. There's a situation where, and I mean, this is obviously very large field tournament. The situation where Laird has the passing role in a trailing game script for the Dolphins, so you can sprinkle him out a little bit as well. Adam Shaheen, third tight end. I mean, we're getting really deep here. We talked about most of the stuff I'm doing, but those are two sprinkles that I have as well. Shaheen has had a target pretty much every time he's been active, so he's in play too.
Laird has 2 fantasy points on the season.
He's been inactive most of the season.
Yeah,
he just got the call from the practice squad when Malcolm Brown got injured.
I have not been keeping track. I had not been keeping track of when he was active. So yeah, that makes sense based on their roster there. So, all right, back to the YouTube chat here. Dan Janning says Shaheen is a cheap guy. Yeah, Keith just mentioned that. And why not play the Dolphins defense? And yeah, Slate IQ likes the Dolphins defense a little bit. And again, with the way Baltimore plays aggressively, you could certainly see some turnovers, and Lamar's going to try to run it. You know, sometimes he'll get sacked. It is what it is. I think the Dolphins are certainly in play as a defensive unit, a little bit contrarian tonight for sure. All right, before we get out of here, appreciate it if you hit the thumbs up button. We like seeing those thummy thumbs, as Blunder would say. Get those thummy thumbs, and appreciate you helping us out in the YouTube algorithm. And YouTube's taken away the thumbs down feature, so you can't thumb down. I think the algorithm used to not care whether it was the thumb up or thumb down, but I think they're going to be taking away that thumb down at some point. Thumb down if you want, while you still can, because you're not going to be able to do it much longer. I'm not sure when that's going into effect, but anyway, saw that this morning. That's neither here nor there. We've made it to lock. I was really concerned about making it up to lock with so few options. Like, just play Lamar and play the tight ends. That's how Showdown works. But we got it, and we had some interesting discussion along the way. We'll see if my pessimistic nature, right? If the Ravens lose to the Dolphins tonight, my pessimistic fan narrative will be coming out in full force. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But I'm going to go enjoy the game tonight, and then hope my team can pull out a W and maybe win some money along the way. Like, if they lose, but the winning touchdown for the Dolphins got me like $1 million, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
That'd be okay.
The problem with being a DFS player, sometimes you have to root against your team when it benefits you financially.
The problem is, like, it'd be hard to run the iterations of knowing what would happen until it actually does. So I'd probably be mad in real time, and then, oh, hey, look. Odds are long of that happening, but you never know. So, all right, we're going to go ahead and get out of here. Thanks to our producer, Devin, for keeping us up and going. Thanks to Keith for joining me. I'm Justin. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday night, everybody, and heading into the weekend. Have a good one, and we will talk to you all soon. Have a good evening.